Hey guys, welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Andre Seegers and Ash Paulson, both of whom got the chance to play 2 hours of Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric for the Wii U. So guys, what'd you think?
Well, that's a great question. So here's the thing. I actually was really excited seeing the initial trailer for the game, and I did like what I saw there. It looked very promising. I will say, having played the Wii U version of the game now fully, it's not quite what I was expecting. And part of that is because the build we were playing seemed to be extremely early. At least I'm hoping it was extremely early, because it played like it was. With just tons of slowdown. The frame rate in the adventure levels was... I don't want to guess what it is, but it was bad. It was pretty bad, almost constantly. And the game's pace too just was a lot slower than it looked in the trailer. And part of that is because we were just playing mostly the adventure stages, which does have a slower pace. We didn't get to see any of the hub world, which seems like you'll be able to move around quicker in. And we only got to play one of the speed levels that actually does, move like you'd expect a Sonic game to. It's concerning right now, I would say, ultimately. There are some highlights there, which we'll get into. But yeah, it's not quite what I expected.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, I definitely liked Sonic Boom's initial reveal. I thought it was an exciting trailer, and I was excited about the possibilities of what this new universe could hold. And just as a little background, I'm not even actually a believer in the Sonic cycle. I think Sonic's been on the up and up since Sonic Unleashed. Honestly, I've really enjoyed.
Said like a true Sonic fan.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think pretty much all the recent Sonic games have been great. So I'm coming from the perspective of liking all the recent Sonic games.
Right.
But this, I definitely had some issues with it. It honestly played to me, the build that we played kind of felt to me like a Sonic version of Epic Mickey. It was just kind of an unremarkable 3D adventure game, except starring Sonic characters. And like you said, it didn't really feel like it was ready to be shown off. Mm-hmm. The frame rate was really... unstable, a lot of texture pop in, a lot of... you and I both experienced a glitch where we just fell through the floor, and it certainly was not what I was expecting, and I'm definitely not of the belief that Sonic always needs to be able to go fast, right. But this game in particular felt like it was just too slow.
Yeah,
for a Sonic game.
Well, I think I mentioned in my preview, and I think we talked about this at the event, where I don't know I forget if you had the same thing I did, but I kept trying to hold the trigger button to make Sonic run like you do in Lost World.
Yeah, me too.
But it didn't do anything.
And it doesn't. Yeah.
It's really depressing for me, because I, like you, both of you guys, I was really excited when I first saw the trailer. I analyzed it. I saw a lot of really cool details in there, and I thought this could be a truly great game, especially because of the pedigree that's behind it. Some former Naughty Dog people who worked on the Jak and Daxter games, and it almost seems like it's too much like the Jak and Daxter games from your descriptions. If you took these Sonic characters and replaced them with Jak and Daxter characters, I think people would be overall more positive about it. Now, granted, if that you still have to take out the fact that you guys ran into slowdown and glitches
right.
and stuff like that. But as far as the gameplay model, Sonic, I'm of the same opinion of Ash. He doesn't need to go fast. I actually was more of an explorer with the original Sonic games. I don't need to go fast. It's just a fun little thing that you can do. But you do expect some sort of speed at certain points to get across the feeling that Sonic is fast. And while they do seem to be in here, based on your preview, Andre, I'm hoping that it shows up a little bit more often, but we'll have to, I guess, wait and see.
Well, it's partially a expectations thing, I think. I mean, you're right, Sonic doesn't have to move fast, but it's kind of what you expect, and it's kind of what he's known for.
Yeah.
If you're not going to do that, why even make a Sonic game, really, I suppose? I mean, again, it doesn't have to... it doesn't have to move fast all the time or anything. But, it almost feels like if you're not going to focus on that at all, for the most part, why make it Sonic? But anyways, but putting that aside, that doesn't change the fact that the game can be good, as a slow Sonic game. So it is partially an expectations thing, because it plays very much unlike, it doesn't play anything like Sonic Colors, really, or even Sonic Generations. It does bear some resemblance, I would say, to, and you guys would know better than I do, since you played all the Sonic games, but to Sonic Adventure, some of those other character levels, where they are slower paced.
Yeah. It does, except that, in Sonic Adventure, Sonic's in Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic and Shadows levels were still based around speed.
Right.
I mean, they were still fast. And even in Lost World, this is something I thought Lost World did well. It was a slower game, but once you held down that trigger button, Sonic, moved like he should.
Right.
And the thing is that if Sonic wasn't a previously established character and wasn't known for his speed, nothing in Sonic Boom would communicate to me that he's supposed to be a speedy, fast character,
Yeah, except for the speed level. But yeah,
but they're all equally fast in that level.
You're right.
They're all equal. Even
That's
Amy
true.
is as fast as Sonic.
Yeah.
So and Knuckles is as fast as Sonic.
You're
so
right.
it's like, nothing would communicate to me that he's supposed to be speedy.
So let's get into these modes. I believe you guys basically saw 3 different types of modes in the demo itself.
Right.
The first of which, and seemed like the most common of which, is the adventure mode.
Yeah.
So what's the adventure mode like?
So the adventure mode, there were 2 stages in the demo. There were the pit, which kind of reminded me of Planet Wisp from Sonic Colors. It was kind of a natural area, like kind of taking place in a canyon with a lot of greenery and plants, but with machinery as well and factories. And then there's also the ocean purification plant, which is just kind of like obviously a dark factory type machine-like level. And basically, in the pit, you play as Sonic and Knuckles, and in the purification plant, you play as Sonic and Amy. And the way these levels are laid out is that they both have diverging paths that kind of play to each character's strengths. And there are color-coded areas in each of the adventure levels that are only accessible to a certain character. So Sonic, for example, has blue ramps that he can spin dash up that can get him to places only he can go, whereas Amy has like pink platforms that she can reach because she's the only one who can triple jump. Likewise, Tails has fans that allow him to use his tails to float up to high places, and Knuckles has walls that he can climb and he can burrow underground. So it does make for some interesting level design, and this is something that I think Sonic Boom actually did right. I think there's real potential here for level design that specializes in each of the characters, and especially with regard to co-op mode, which we'll get into later. But you can choose a character of your choice, and then go off and kind of do your own things and explore areas only available to your character. And I do think there's potential here, but again, it's just the actual proceedings just aren't that smooth, and I kept getting the idea that this was not a game that was ready to be shown off. I felt like Sega had kind of put pressure on the development team to have something ready for E3, but it just wasn't there yet.
I mean, they can't ship a game in this condition.
There's no way.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they will either.
No.
I do think a lot of stuff will be ironed out, but it is odd that they showed it this early.
Yeah.
But yeah, the character change, being able to switch characters, definitely probably one of the highlights of the experience, I'd say. Especially in the second level, for instance, and when you're exploring the underground base, there is this giant room you can explore, and there's multiple paths through it. Depending on which character you choose, you can of course switch off. So for Sonic, there are these chasms you will reach, and then for Sonic to cross them, you have to use his homing attack, as I recall, to go from these beacon type things. I forget what exactly they were.
Right.
They're, these floating beacons, and you can cross the gap that way. Or if you're playing as Amy, you can switch over to her, and she can hop on these platforms, and it basically turns into a side-scrolling section.
Yeah, it becomes 2D.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I actually enjoyed those, and she can use her hammer to swing around from some platforms, as a swing and jump off and get long distance. So yeah, the character switching stuff definitely seems interesting, and in the first level too, yeah, with being able as Knuckles to climb up walls or dig underground and pop up elsewhere to just jump really high in the air. One issue I had with specifically the Knuckles segment was there was this caged area you could enter only as Knuckles, but the camera didn't follow it correctly, really.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't. So there was no you had no depth perception, but there was these lines of coins you had to hop up into, and it took me forever to figure out where to position Knuckles to hop out into the air to grab the coins.
I had the same exact issue.
Yeah.
Rings.
Or rings, yeah, sorry. Yeah, the camera was just not positioned well enough there at all to account for that. But luckily that didn't happen too often.
The thing I'm taking from this is that it does sound like it had potential, because one of the best things about Sonic is the branching pathways. For each time you play, you can take different routes and check out different ways to get through the level. And there's the best Sonic games always has more for you to discover and different paths to take. So the fact that they're making this bit more of a central gameplay element and giving a way for each of these characters to feel unique is really promising to me. So, like, I really hope they iron these things out. But what else did you guys notice about the adventure mode?
Well, I mean, that like you said, Derek, that unquestionably to me is the most promising part of adventure mode. Unfortunately, though, the combat is something else I want to talk about, and that, to me, the combat, I mean, it's basically, you know, third-person adventure game type combat like you kind of saw in Sonic Unleashed. But here's the thing, and you might not be able to believe this, but Sonic Unleashed did it better. And I know that sounds crazy, but honestly, playing as the Werehog in Sonic Unleashed was more rewarding and had a deeper combo system that I remember than anything here in Sonic Boom. The combat here felt very button mashy, very inconsequential. It just didn't really seem like it mattered what you did. I'm sure in the final game there will be unlockable combos and things like that for each character, but honestly, the combat just felt very hands-off and very kind of, okay, I'm just going to mash Y over and over again and I'll come out on top, but I don't really care how I do it.
Again, it's a whole expectations thing. You don't expect this kind of like long, dragged-out combat in the Sonic game usually. And yet, you know, here it is, and it takes a while. And it does just throw off the pace of the game, because it almost feels like you're going point to point to these combat sections, where you're taking out all these enemies before moving on to the next point. In my preview I mentioned it almost feels like more of a brawler at points.
It does, and I mean, and as a brawler, I think Sonic Unleashed did it better. I mean, hell, even Sonic 2006, which is a horrible game, had faster paced combat than here in Sonic Boom. And that's okay if Sonic Boom is going for a slower pace, but regardless of what they're going for, it's just the fighting is not executed well at all.
Yeah,
so far.
Yeah, exactly. So far, I mean, it might turn out better in the final game. I'm hoping it will. And they are doing, you know, a couple of interesting things there. You know, comparatively, you know, like using the your Enter Beam as a lasso to rip off enemy shields, for instance, which reminded me a little bit of like Metroid Prime 3.
Right.
Or being able to pick up enemies even and use them as projectiles too. And that's something that actually factored into some of the boss fights we saw, such as in the first level in that mining area. There's a giant drill enemy to take on. In order to fight him, you have to pick up enemies and chuck them into the drill, which, you know, deals damage to him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then something else too was a little bit more clever. Was in the second level, the underwater base. There was this enemy like chasing you throughout the level, and you have to keep running away from him. But at one point, you do fight him. At least one point, you fight him, and you have to throw enemies at him multiple times to knock him off a ledge. So yeah, I mean, so that seemed a little bit more interesting to me, and the boss fights in general actually seemed to be better than the combat did overall.
Well, speaking of which, let's switch over to the boss mode, which was the second mode that you guys explored. So, obviously, Andre was impressed by him. What'd you think, Ash?
I was impressed by them too, but I'm also a little concerned because Andre, you just described the first boss fight perfectly. And then there's also an Eggman boss fight where you have to use your Inner Beam to lasso the missiles he throws at you to stun him, and then you go up and do a Y button mashy combo 3 times, and then you win. And that's fine. I mean, it got a little more challenging every round that you do that. But my concern is that every boss that we saw in the demo, it had the same mechanic of you using your Inner Beam to lasso something, whether it's an enemy or a missile, and throw it at the boss to weaken their defenses, combo them, rinse and repeat. Mm-hmm. And that didn't inspire a whole lot of confidence in me that, you know, we're going to see other mechanics or ways to defeat bosses in the final game. I'm sure we will, but it's just strange that all 3 bosses that we saw, you basically took them down in the same way, and that kind of concerned me a little.
I will say though that I think I managed to overlook that for the Dr. Eggman boss fight, at least, just because I thought the presentation of that was fantastic. Like, even though the mechanics were pretty simple, like, it's your standard boss fight, you dodge and attack, you counter it, and although this one was maybe a little bit more involved than some boss fights, because there are multiple steps, because after you throw the missile, then you have to tether him to the, Inner Beam him to the ground, then you run up and then you attack Eggman directly, and then that's when the whole process repeats, I think.
Right.
But what I loved about this was just the presentation. And actually, it kind of applies to the whole game, but specifically for Eggman, he reacts throughout the boss fight to being attacked. Like, him and Sonic banter back and forth. In my initial preview of the game, which I had to cut, unfortunately, afterward, I showed how Sonic's asking Dr. Eggman if he had like any trouble putting it together this time, and Dr. Eggman's like, "I only had 2 screws left over,"
Nice,
as if it were like it's something from IKEA or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I actually just found the whole presentation great, especially with how he gets angrier and angrier or more frustrated the more damage you do to him, with how his Eggmobile pod in the middle not working properly within the giant robot. So he has to knock it back into place, and at the end, the entire thing just fails completely, and he has to like physically like hop around in it to get it going again.
Yeah.
It's just really funny, and I actually thought they did a really good job there. But
no, I actually want to touch on that too, because that they changed the voice cast with Sonic Colors, and it's been the same ever since. And the presentation for the Sonic games has been phenomenal ever since. The voice work, especially in Sonic Colors, Generations, and Lost World, was fantastic, and that is totally true here. For at least for what we could hear. I mean, the event was pretty loud, and they had the volume on the TVs down. But the voice work I could hear was all really fantastic, and there was a lot of really great banter back and forth, and not just between Sonic and Eggman, but between all the characters. And that really kind of lent a sense of just a sense of familiarity with these characters and camaraderie that I think is really going to be important when the final game comes out.
yeah, totally, and that's actually something that I thought, was handled well across the game. Yeah, like there is a lot of banter going on here, and it strikes me as having like a little bit like Saturday morning cartoonish, which makes sense because it's based on the cartoon or working with the cartoon. And I like that. Like I thought they did a good job overall, from what I could tell.
Well, I noticed in one of the comments you did get to see our preview, wow, we know exactly what Sonic does with the rings now, because one of the little audio clips was Sonic picking up rings and him going, rings, nom 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 nom. Exactly. So apparently he eats them. So, I mean, I did get the sense from watching that preview that there is a lot of personality to this, which Sonic always kind of has. I mean, you can always count on at least that for a Sonic game. So I really enjoyed that. Hearing about the bosses, I'm hopeful they'll change things up. Doesn't mean much, but I really do hope they'll at least throw something new in there. I mean, Sonic bosses have never been really that creative. Even going back to the original, it's Eggman having a new type of toy. You have to figure out how he goes through, and once you get really good at it, you can just take him out like it's nothing. But I do hope that they iron out some of those issues. But I guess there's only one more mode to really talk about, and that is speed mode.
Right.
So how's that?
So the speed levels are apparently what connects the hub worlds to the mission or to the adventure levels themselves. Now we didn't get to see any of this in context, so we didn't get to see like how that whole process works exactly. But that's how it was described to us. So yeah, basically each time you venture to a new adventure world, you'll be taking these speed levels. And I thought it was fun. But yeah, it struck me as one who played Sonic Colors as playing a lot like, any number of those levels do for the most part. Maybe a bit more on the simplistic side overall. It just in that there wasn't a ton of variety in the one level we saw. But I did enjoy it. It gives you that speed that you expect from a Sonic game. And I actually really enjoyed the enter beam portions, where like you grapple to basically a zip line, and then you can swing side to side while riding it. I actually really like that. So I think it's fun. I think I might like it even better in context with how it might help break up the other portions of the game. I mean, it's really hard to say at this point how it'll all flow together, but I did like that level.
Yeah, me too. Mechanically, that was definitely my favorite part of the whole demo. It felt a lot like the 3D Sonic gameplay that we've kind of grown used to with Generations and Colors, and I'd love to see that come back. And even one of the developers I spoke to said that's exactly what they were going for. They wanted to kind of have a little familiarity with recent Sonic games, so as to not completely put players off who are not really expecting Sonic Boom. So it definitely comes through, and I agree with you, Andre. I love the Interbeam sections of those levels, and they definitely seem to be there seemed to be a focus on building alternate pathways through those levels based on whether you wanted to use the Interbeam or not. Like there's a section where you can use the Interbeam if you see the queue coming up, if you see the rail coming up where you have to attach to it. But if you miss it, you'll still keep going. It's just a different pathway through the level,
right.
And there may be less rings or something on that path, but. So it isn't just a one and done. If you miss it, you lose a life. It's there are various ways to get through the level.
I guess the last thing to talk about is that this game is sort of is basically designed for co-op. You always have, even if you don't have somebody playing with you, you always have an AI partner. And I don't believe you guys got to try out the co-op specifically,
no.
But I am very curious to see how the AI partner acted as you were playing it? Like, were they a hindrance, or did they actually help, or did they just sort of stay out of your way and show up whenever you needed to move on?
For me, they were never a hindrance. I honestly don't remember them doing that much either. But like whenever you needed them, like for like some switches that you need two people to work with, or a couple instances where you need to enter being the same thing, they'll pop right up and they'll help you out. And apparently the developer was telling me that if you're doing poorly in the game, the AI characters will get better and help you out to get past that instance. More so, I guess, by attacking enemies. I mean, you do see them like attacking enemies and stuff in the background. I wasn't paying that much attention, so I don't know how much they were really helping. Maybe you can speak more to that, Ash.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. The AI was generally helpful and stayed out of my way. When I needed them to do something in the environment, contextually, they were always there. In battle, I don't know how helpful they actually were. I don't know if they just kind of gave the illusion of being helpful, because
Right.
I definitely saw them fighting enemies. But even if it's not actually being helpful, that illusion goes a long way toward making it feel like that there's actual teamwork going on. And that's one of the main themes of the game that the developers described to me, was that Sonic can't do this alone. This is a team effort, and seeing your teammates beside you taking on enemies and defeating them, whether it's actually helping in the context of the game or not, it definitely lends a good sense of the illusion definitely helps in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
What was interesting to me is that the AI and the character switching reminded me most of a game that probably not a lot of people played, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. And that game wasn't that great, but that was one of the few parts that the game actually got right, which is you switch to the other characters via the D-pad. And it's instantaneous, like you hit left on the D-pad, for example, and you switch to Tails. And then you're just right there, you're playing as them, and then the AI automatically takes over whoever you were previously playing as. And you can do this at any time. And again, you see your your other characters, teammates, fighting enemies, and it just kind of lends a sense that you really are working together with the other characters, and I did like that.
It sounds like it has potential, because that's when as soon as I figured out that you're probably not going to be alone in a lot of these levels, you immediately start worrying, because you either have some really decent AI that stays out of your way and helps out on occasion, or you have the idiot AI that will hinder your progression.
Yeah, and you're never going to be alone in this game. There will always be, according to the developer, at least two characters, or at least two characters there. So you're always going to be paired up with someone.
Yeah, I remember two characters in adventure stages, and I think for the bosses they said usually all four characters will be available.
Yeah, and the speed stages too, and the hub, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys talked a little bit about the presentation already, as far as like the characters interacting and a bit of the dialogue. But how is it other than the voice acting? How's the music? How's the level design and graphics and all that?
Well, the music's an interesting thing, because I actually asked about that specifically because I love Sonic music. And interestingly enough, the rep there told me that they're not willing to talk about who's doing the music yet, which tells me that there might be a big deal with that. I mean, I don't know why there would be, but they said they're not.
Michael Jackson's coming back.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. But they said they're not revealing yet who's doing the soundtrack. But given that's the case, I'm hoping for something big.
It could be. Because you're right, Sonic music is always one of the best parts of any game. Like, Sonic 06 sucked, but it still has some really good tracks.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing that did seem a little bit concerning to me, I mean, besides the low frame rate, which I'm guessing will be fixed, but the visuals overall look to me to be a pretty big step back from what we saw in the initial trailer. Like, it didn't look that good, and there's still plenty of time for them to better that. At the initial unveiling, I'm like, that game looks great, that looks awesome. And then you play it, I didn't really get that sense.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, it honestly looked last gen to me at a lot of parts. It looked like it could have been a Wii game to me in a lot of areas, and I suspect that might be something that might have something to do with the fact that for co-op mode, they've got two versions of the game running at all times. You've got the gamepad, one person's on the gamepad, and they've got their own gameplay going, and then you've got the other person on the TV, and they're exploring completely different parts of the same level and affecting each other in different ways. So I know that it's been said in the past that when when the Wii U has to render two gameplay instances at once, performance suffers. And I think that might be what we're seeing here, because I know that they are building this game to be co-op at all times.
Right.
So they're not building it with a single-player experience in mind, like Sonic Lost World, for instance. They're building it to be co-op at any time whenever you want to do it. And I think that might have an impact on performance and what they're able to get out of the overall game. And I think what the reason it was jarring is because we just came off of playing Sonic Lost World, which, whatever you thought of the actual game, it looked beautiful. And it ran smoothly, the frame rate was excellent. I mean, it was a great looking game. And then you see something like Sonic Boom, and it looks kind of last gen, to be honest, in a lot of ways.
Well, I think you guys covered most aspects of the game, but I guess before we end this off, I was like, just hear from you guys. What did it do well? I mean, do you still have excitement for this game, or has this sort of demo sort of killed your hype for now, as long as it's still in this form?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head right there, Derek. I mean, my hype isn't completely killed, but as it stands in this form, I'm not nearly as hyped as I was for the game. There are things it did well. I mean, from the presentational aspect, again, the banter back and forth between the characters, the speed levels, and the overall idea of having different pathways through these giant adventure stages, that make use of each character's unique abilities. There's some good ideas here, and there's some good presentational elements that, if they can get the game more stable and just get the game better looking in general, I think we could have something going on here. But it's just it doesn't feel like it was ready to be shown, and definitely as it stands in this at this point, my hype is definitely lower than what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest Sonic fan in general, but I was intrigued by what they showed initially. I was looking forward to it, and this definitely dampened my enthusiasm for it too. But it was a very early build. It's hard to say how it will all work in context. Maybe it will. It's entirely possible the game will work a lot better, seeing everything, in its proper form. But yeah, as is, the demo. Yeah, did kind of bring my expectations back down to reality, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's definitely some promising things there. I like the character switching mechanics, and the presentation is really good. I would say it's some of the best. I mean, Sonic games usually are pretty good with that, but I think this one's doing even better than at least the ones I've played. Especially the Dr. Eggman boss fight again, just a fantastic job there. And the constant banter between your teammates. Just also seems really cool. But yeah, what actually surprised me, and we'll get more into this in a separate discussion, was just how much better I like the 3DS version of Sonic Boom, actually. I really like that. So make sure to check out that discussion when we do it.
Yeah, we'll get to that one.
Yeah.
But for now, as far as listening to you guys' opinions, I mean, my hype is a little killed as well. I'm really hoping that they improve it, and maybe I doubt this will happen, but I hope they have a better version of this demo at E3.
Yeah.
Who knows, honestly. Because I do have high hopes for this game. I want it to be good. I want all Sonic games to be good. And especially since I'm going to be the one reviewing it, so I kind of want to play a good game, not a bad game. But overall, I'm going to stay cautiously optimistic on this one and just hope that they can iron out those kinks, because I don't know much about development, but it seems like they have a decent basis here. If they can just address a few of your guys' problems, we could probably end up with a pretty decent Sonic game.
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely potential there for it to be better than what we saw. Yeah, so I do want to see how it's actually going to shape up entirely, and we haven't seen anything in the hub yet, so I'm curious to see how those are going to function as well.
Alright guys, well I think that covers it for our discussion of the Wii U version of Sonic Boom. Of course, stay tuned for our upcoming discussion on the 3DS version. Thanks for watching, and if you liked this video, be sure to like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at GameXplain, and make sure to stay tuned as we cover more on Sonic and other things gaming. Bye!